Hi guys, welcome to the Channel of Love study group. Okay, we're on chapter 11, How to Raise Your Own Salary by Napoleon Hill. So, I don't even know what the chapter is, what it's called. Let's have a look. Okay, seek inspiration, in brackets, applied enthusiasm. Chapter number 11. Okay, we ended on this quote, which says, two kinds of people never get ahead. Those who do only that which they are told to do, and those who will not do what they are told to do. Two kinds of people never get ahead. Those who do only that which they are told to do, and those who will not do what they are told to do. Okay, chapter 11. Seek inspiration, applied enthusiasm. Inspiration, as used here, has reference to that combination of emotions, usually known as enthusiasm, but inspired feeling has a deeper meaning because it is related to the spiritual powers of man and has its source in the subconscious mind. Inspiration, the emotion put into action through spiritual power, is the beginning of all great achievements of whatever nature. Everyone desires to achieve personal success in one form or another, but only those who acquire the habit of fanning the fire of enthusiasm into a white heat of obsessional desire ever attain noteworthy success. More than 40 years ago, the stepmother of a young mountaineer called him into the family living room, excluded the other children of the family from the conference, and said something which changed his entire life for the better, and at the same time planted in his mind a desire which has transplanted into thousands of other minds, the desire to become self-determining through the rendering of useful service. This boy was only 11 years of age, but he was known among the mountain folk as the worst boy in the county. This is what his stepmother said to him. People misjudge you. They call you the worst boy in the county, but you are not the worst boy. You are the most active boy, and all you need is a definite purpose to which you can direct the attention of your inquiring mind. You have a keen imagination and plenty of initiative. Therefore, I suggest that you become a writer. If you will do this and give as much interest to reading and writing as you have been devoting to playing pranks on the neighbours, you may live to see the time when your influence will be felt throughout this state. There was something in the stepmother's tone of voice which registered effectively in the bad boy's mind. He caught the spirit of enthusiasm in which his stepmother had spoken to him and began immediately to act on her suggestion. By the time he was 15 years of age, he was writing newspaper and magazine stories that were being published in small newspapers and magazines. His writing was not brilliant, but it carried a spirit of enthusiasm which made it readable. At the age of 18, he was assigned by the editor of Bob Taylor's magazine to write the story of Andrew Carnegie's achievements in industry. That assignment was destined to bring another change in his life, for it led not only to the opportunity to write books that would make his influence felt throughout the state, as his stepmother had suggested, but that influence now extends throughout a major portion of the world, and it is obviously destined to render useful service in helping to save the American way of life from annihilation. In the interview with Andrew Carnegie, this young writer was moved by Mr. Carnegie's enthusiasm. He acquired the spirit of that enthusiasm, and it has been that spirit which has made his books bestsellers for many years. Mr. Carnegie has emphasised the importance of initiative, definiteness of purpose, persistence, and organised endeavour. We come now to the chapter in which an analysis will be made of the power behind all these, the power that gives life and action to these qualities. That power is known as inspiration. Hill. If I am ready, Mr. Carnegie, for your... If I am ready, yes. Let's start again. Okay. Hill. I am ready, Mr. Carnegie, for your analysis of the 11th principle of individual achievement, which you call inspiration. I wish you to define the meaning of this term and describe how one may develop enthusiasm at will. Carnegie. Inspiration can be developed by stimulating the faculty of the emotions through any of the 14 major emotions we have mentioned in previous interviews, or any other emotion. Hill. Then inspiration is emotion in action? Carnegie. That is the brief way of stating it. Perhaps it would be more correctly stated if one said that inspiration is voluntary emotion, a feeling that one initiates at will. But you have overlooked one very important factor in your questions, the question of control of inspiration. It is just as important to know how to modify, control, or shut off entirely the action of the emotions as it is to know how to start them into action. Before we go into the discussion of emotional control, however, let us take inventory of the benefits available through inspiration. To begin with, let us be reminded that inspiration is the result of desire, expressed in terms of action and based upon motive. Inspiration is a form of emanation which creates enthusiasm. No normal person ever goes into a heat of enthusiasm without a motive. It is obvious, therefore, that the beginning of all enthusiasm is desire based on motive. There are two types of enthusiasm, passive and active. Perhaps it would be more accurate if I said that enthusiasm may be expressed in two ways, passively, through the stimulation of emotional feeling, and actively, by the expression of feeling through words or deeds. Hill. Which is the more beneficial of the two, the active expression or the passive? Carnegie. The answer to that depends upon the circumstances. Of course, passive enthusiasm always precedes the expression of active enthusiasm, as one must feel it before he can express it in any form of actions or words. There are times when the expression of enthusiasm may be detrimental to one's interest, as it may indicate over-eagerness or disclose one's state of mind under circumstances when he does not wish to have it known to others. It is highly important, then, that one learn how to withhold the expression of his feelings under all circumstances. It is also important that one acquire the ability to give open expression of his feelings at will. In both instances, the control is the important factor. Now let us briefly describe some of the benefits of both passive and active enthusiasm. First of all, let us remember that enthusiasm, which may be an expression of one or more of the emotions, stimulates the vibration of thought and makes it more intense, thus starting the faculty of the imagination to work in connection with the motive which inspired the enthusiasm. Enthusiasm gives tone quality to one's voice and makes it pleasing and impressive. A salesman or public speaker would be ineffective without the ability to turn on his enthusiasm at will. The same is true of one who engages in ordinary conversation. Even the most prosaic subjects can be made interesting if they are expressed with enthusiasm. Without it, the most interesting subjects can become boresome. Enthusiasm inspires initiative, both in thought and in physical action. It is very difficult for one to do well that in which he has no feeling of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm dispels physical fatigue and overcomes laziness. It has been said that there are no lazy men. What appears to be a lazy man is one who is moved by no motive over which he becomes enthusiastic. Enthusiasm stimulates the entire nervous system and causes it to perform its duties more efficiently, including in particular the function of digestion of food. For this reason, the meal hour should be the pleasantest hour of the day, and it should never become the occasion for settling personal or family differences or of opinion, nor should it become the time for the correction of the faults of the children. Enthusiasm stimulates the subconscious section of the brain and puts it to work in connection with the motive which inspires enthusiasm. In fact, there is no known method of stimulating the subconscious mind voluntarily except that of inspired feeling. Here, let us emphasize the fact that the subconscious mind acts upon all feeling, whether it is negative or positive. It will act on the emotion of fear as quickly as it will act on the emotion of love, or it will go to work on the worry over poverty as quickly as it will act on the feeling of opulence. It is important, therefore, to recognise that enthusiasm is the positive expression of feeling. Enthusiasm is contagious. It affects everyone within its range, a fact that is well known to all master salesmen. Moreover, one may influence others through either the active or passive expression of enthusiasm. As passive enthusiasm stimulates one's brain so that it sends out highly intensified thought vibrations that may be picked up by others. Enthusiasm discourages all forms of negative thought and dispels fear and worry, thus preparing the mind for the expression of faith. Enthusiasm is the twin brother of the faculty of the will, it being the major source of sustained action of the will. It is also a sustaining force in connection with persistence. We might say, therefore, that willpower, persistence, and enthusiasm are triplets, which give one sustained action with a minimum loss of physical energy. As a matter of fact, enthusiasm converts fatigue and static energy into active energy. Emerson spoke a deeper truth that most people recognise when he said that nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. He must have known that enthusiasm gives quality to every word a man speaks, to every task at which he sets his hands. Hill. I have heard it said that writers unconsciously project their enthusiasm, or the lack of it, in every word they write, so that even the casual reader may interpret the writer's mental attitude as he wrote. Is this a sound theory? Carnegie. Not just a sound theory, but a fact. Try it out yourself and be convinced. A man's writing may be translated into other languages, but it will very largely carry with it the same tempo of enthusiasm the writer felt when writing. I have heard it said that the writer of advertisements who feels no enthusiasm in connection with his copy writes poor copy, no matter how many facts he may describe. I have also heard it said that the lawyer who feels no enthusiasm over his case fails to be convincing to judges and juries. And there is plenty of evidence that the enthusiasm of a doctor is his greatest remedy in the sick room. Enthusiasm is one of the greatest builders of confidence, for everyone knows that enthusiasm and faith are closely related. Enthusiasm denotes hope and courage and belief in oneself. I do not recall ever having prompted a man to a higher position or ever having employed a man for a responsible position who did not first demonstrate his enthusiasm over the possibilities of the position. I have observed that the young people who have gone to work in our offices as clerks and stenographers have promoted themselves into more responsible positions in almost exact ratio to the enthusiasm they displayed in their work. Hill. Is it not possible for one to display too much enthusiasm for his own goal? Carnegie. Yes, uncontrolled enthusiasm often is as detrimental as no enthusiasm. For example, the man who is so enthusiastic over himself and his own ideas that he monopolises the conversation when conversing with others is sure to be unpopular, not to mention the fact that he misses many opportunities to learn by listening to others. Then there is the man who becomes too enthusiastic over the roulette wheel or the horses, and the man who becomes more enthusiastic over ways and means of getting something for nothing than he does over rendering useful service. Not to mention the woman who becomes more enthusiastic over card parties and society than she does over making her home and herself attractive to her husband. This sort of uncontrolled enthusiasm may be very detrimental to all whom it affects. Hill. Is enthusiasm of any value to the man engaged in manual labour? Carnegie. I can best answer that by calling your attention to the fact that most of the higher officials of my organisation began in the humblest of positions. The man who made the greatest progress of all my associates began as a stake driver, and he formerly worked as a teamster. His boundless enthusiasm was the quality that first attracted my attention to him, and it was the same quality that lifted him, step by step, into the highest position we had to offer. Yes, enthusiasm can be of value to anyone, regardless of his occupation, for it is the quality that attracts friends, establishes confidence, and breaks down the opposition of others. Hill. What part, if any, does enthusiasm or lack of it play in the relationship of the home? Carnegie. Let us go back a little way and consider the part that enthusiasm plays in bringing men and women together in a bond of marriage. Did you ever hear of a man winning the woman of his choice without displaying considerable enthusiasm over her? And it also works the other way around. A man will not be inclined to propose marriage to the woman who shows no enthusiasm over him. Mutual enthusiasm, therefore, is usually the basis of marriage, and woe unto the party to the marriage who allows that enthusiasm to wane afterward. We speak of the relationship as love, but what is love but mutual enthusiasm of two people over each other? Hill. Under what circumstances does enthusiasm reach its highest degree of personal benefit? Carnegie. In a mastermind alliance, two or more people work together in a spirit of perfect harmony for the attainment of a definite purpose. Here, the enthusiasm of each member of the alliance projects itself into the minds of all the other members, and the sum total of enthusiasm thus created by the harmonious blending of a group of minds becomes available to and influences each individual member. Hill. You mean, for example, where there are, let us say, a dozen men allied in a mastermind group, each man in the alliance has his own enthusiasm supplemented by that of all the others. Therefore, his enthusiasm becomes multiplied by 12. Is that the idea? Carnegie. That is the general idea, but it often happens that the enthusiasm of one or more members of such an alliance is increased much more than the sum total of the entire group. One of the strange effects of a mastermind alliance is the fact that it brings into operation the principle of increasing returns. In connection with the stepping up of the vibrations of the mind, so that one person may feel the effects of enthusiasm to an extent that produces the state of mind known as faith. Theoretically, what happens is this. The influence of the mastermind alliance of minds steps up the rate of thought vibration to where it reaches the level of infinite intelligence on the part of one or more members of the alliance. Under such a condition, I have known men to create ideas that were not capable of creating alone, that they were not capable of creating alone under the ordinary circumstances of thought, ideas far beyond the range of knowledge of all the members combined. Hill, I can see that enthusiasm is a greatly misunderstood word, judging by what you have just said. Carnegie, it is perhaps the most misunderstood word in the English language, for there are but few who recognise the so-called genius is only a man who, because of his great capacity for enthusiasm, steps up the vibrations of his mind until he is enabled to communicate with a source of knowledge not available to him through the faculty of reason alone. Most so-called enthusiasm is nothing but an uncontrolled expression of one's ego, a state of mental excitement which is easily recognised as nothing but a meaningless expression of personal vanity. That sort of enthusiasm may be very detrimental to those who indulge in it, as they usually express themselves in some form of exaggeration. Hill, will you give more details concerning your statement that many of your employees have promoted themselves through the expression of enthusiasm? Just what effect did their enthusiasm have on their jobs that entitled them to promotion? Carnegie, it not only had an effect on their own jobs, but it affected those who worked with them. You recall my statement in the effect that a man with a negative mind, working in a plant where he may contact hundreds of other workmen, may influence all of the others to become also negative to a greater or lesser degree. Well, the same principle applies where one has a positive mind and expresses enthusiasm in connection with his work. Any state of mind is contagious. There is a law of nature which tends to make men's thought habits permanent. That same law may also be related to the principle of telepathy, through which thought passes from one brain to another. At any rate, the person with an active mind, whether it be negative or positive, will influence every person within range of that mind so that he acquires a portion of it. Now you can see why an employee with a positive mind is worth more than one with a negative mind. The employee who thinks in terms of enthusiasm naturally is one who is happy in his work. He therefore radiates a wholesome mental attitude that spreads to those around him, and they too take on a part of his attitude. Accordingly, they become more effective workers. But that is not the only reason why the person who expresses enthusiasm as a habit promotes himself into the more desirable positions of life. Enthusiasm, as I have already stated, gives one a keener imagination, increases his intuitive, makes him more alert of mind, gives him a more pleasing personality, and thereby attracts the cooperation of others. These traits of mind make it inevitable that one promotes himself into any position which he may become capable of filling. Every thought one releases becomes a definite part of one's character. This transformation takes place through the principle of auto-suggestion. One does not have to be a mathematician to figure out what will happen to the person whose dominating thoughts are positive, in view of the fact that such a person is adding power to his own character with every thought he releases. Thought by thought, he builds a personality that provides him with a strong will, a keen imagination, self-reliance, persistence, initiative, and the courage and ambition to desire and to acquire whatever he wants. An employer has but little to do with the promotion of such a person. If one employer neglects to recognise his ability, he finds another who will, but he manages to keep growing and advancing in any direction he chooses. Hill, I get the idea, Mr. Carnegie. An employee whose mind is dominated by the spirit of enthusiasm is beneficial to an employer, not only by his influence on other employees, but because of his own acquired strength of personality. Is that what you mean? Carnegie, that's what I mean. And the principle applies to everyone, not merely to an employee. Take the owner of a retail store, for example, and you will find that his mental attitude is definitely reflected in every person who works in the store. I have heard it said that a skilled psychologist can walk through any retail store, study the employees a few minutes, and then give a surprisingly accurate description of the owner, of the dominating head of the store, without ever seeing him or hearing a word spoken from him. Hill, then one might say that a store or a business has its own personality, consisting of the dominating influence of the personnel of the business. Is that true? Carnegie, yes, and it is true of the home or any place where people gather regularly. The psychologist with a keen sense of perception can walk into any home, get the mental feel of the place, and tell precisely whether the home is dominated by the spirit of harmony or the spirit of bickering and friction. The mental attitude of people leaves its permanent influence on the very atmosphere of their environment. Every city, for example, has its own rate of vibration made up of the dominating influences and the mental attitudes of the people who live there. Moreover, every street and every block in every street has its own personality, each being so different from the others that the trained psychologist can walk down any street blindfolded and pick up enough information from the mental feel of the street to give an accurate description of the people who live there. Hill, that seems almost incredible, Mr. Carnegie. Carnegie, perhaps it may, to the inexperienced person, but not so to the skilled interpreter of people's mental attitude. If you wish convincing evidence of the accuracy of what I have just said, make an experiment of your own. Take a walk down Fifth Avenue in New York City and observe the feeling of opulence you pick up as you go along. Then go across to the tenement section. Take a stroll down that thoroughfare and observe the feeling of defeatism and poverty that you will pick up. The experiment will provide you with undeniable evidence that the vibrations of Fifth Avenue and the vibrations of the tenement street are different opposites, one negative, the other positive. Carry the experiment still further by going into private homes. Choose a home where you know there is domestic harmony and cooperation. Study carefully the mental feel you pick up in this home without anyone speaking a word to you. Then go into the home where you know the domestic relationship is disturbed by inharmony and family friction. Study the mental feel you pick up there. By the time you have made a dozen such experiments, you will know from first-hand experience that every home has a mental atmosphere that harmonises perfectly with the mental attitude of those who live there. This experiment will also convince you that there is some unknown law of nature which fixes the habits of thought and tends to give them permanency. The law not only gives permanency to thought in the mind of the individual, but it extends the influence of that thought to the environment in which one lives. Firework, to end that off. Firework at 1:02 in the afternoon. Well, hey. That was awesome because that comes in with the reading I'm actually uploading at the moment, a collective reading for the channel. So I'm so pleased that I've actually read a whole chapter in one session. Guys, I will catch up with you soon. Do you want to know what the next chapter is called? It's chapter 12. Okay. I believe it's called Control Your Attention. Okay, let's leave with this little quote. It will pay anyone to stand on the sidelines of life and watch himself go by so he may see himself as others see him. It will pay anyone to stand on the sidelines of life and watch himself go by so he may see himself as others see him. Okay, guys, have yourself a fantastic day, and I'll catch up with you soon. Take care. Much love. Bye for now.